Yeah. Well, thank you everybody for being with us this morning. We're going to be hearing from the Franklin Grand Isle Watershed Alliance, the Farmers Watershed Alliance. And before we start rolling, I'd like to have the committee introduce themselves, starting with our vice chair. I think Senator Pearson's got his mic
All right.
shut off.
Sorry, Chris Pearson from Chittenden. Nice to have you here.
Yeah.
Hi, I'm Anthony Colina, Washington County.
Brian Collmore representing Rutland County.
And Corey Parent representing Franklin County and Alberg.
Yeah, and I'm Bobby Starr. And again, welcome. We already had a little chat with Larry and Scott, and welcome, Heather. We'll get started hearing how you folks have been working past season on your watershed issues and water quality, and any of the other stuff that you guys want to bring up and talk with us in regards to, we'd be glad to hear from you. So first on our agenda this morning is Scott Magnum, and he's chair of the board. So welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Bobby. Appreciate that, or Senator Starr.
Bobby's okay. We're pretty informal.
Okay, great. Yeah. So I mean, I don't have anything formal. First off, I do appreciate you guys inviting us. I think it's really important that we work together. There's a lot of issues on the floor in agriculture. It's certainly something that's kind of volatile right now, ever changing. I think our mission is on the Watershed Alliance is really important to try and help communicate some issues in agriculture and specifically water quality. We certainly have a lot of information on the board that we can share. We try and lead some projects ourselves and try and help steer things in a good direction. So we just continue to do that work. We've certainly faced our own set of challenges this past year. It's been difficult to meet and get projects rolling, but we've certainly still been able to do that and help in UVM extension with some projects that they have to keep work going in the fields. So we've been able to do that even through COVID. So I think the work's continued over the past year. It's been a little bit different, but we've seen some positive work on the water quality front transpire the last few months. So I think that's all good. There's certainly challenges we can talk about economically. There's some continued consolidation going. There's some issues with water quality, some concerns with pesticide management that I think is going to hit the floor. And there's the milk meeting coming up later this week with some price structure, I believe. So I guess we're open to talking about all of those things and happy to share our input and our experiences. Definitely the people on the board that we have today have a lot of different life experiences on the farm. So I think we can offer quite a bit with the 4 people that are representing us today.
Yeah. questions for Scott yet, or would you like, we'll go on and hear the other presenters and then come back to questions and answers and all that good stuff. Heather, we kind of picked you to go last to sum things up, or would you
Yeah,
rather
no.
go?
I was just gonna say, I saw the agenda and I wouldn't mind just letting the farmers go first and have plenty of time to talk with you folks.
You don't mean we're thinking the same way, do you?
That's I don't know.
That was Larry's suggestion, and so we'll have Larry go next.
Good morning, Senators. Definitely appreciate the time that you set aside to have us hear us. A little bit about myself. I am a large family on one of the LFO's dairies in the state, and I'm the vice chair, FWA. And we're basically here, to talk a little bit about, what FWA can do for water quality and the struggles that we have or are having to follow through with that. And one of the things, we used to be able to get quite a bit of funding and be able to help farmers implement some of these water quality programs on their farms. And it kind of bothers me that just yesterday, we got turned down on a grant that would have studied soil health. And, those are the struggles that we're having. We have the expertise working with UVM Extension and a lot of different variable type farmers on our board to help other farmers do better soil health practices on their farms. And when you can't get any funding, it kind of ties our hands.
Larry, who turned you down on that? Where was the grant supposedly coming from?
I believe it was a Lake Champlain Basin or LCBP grant. Is that correct, Heather?
Yes. Yep.
Yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but it's important for us because soil health and that is, very important to our committee. And, we planned on and we have planned and will be working on soil health and all that as the season goes on. So it's good. I mean, if we're having a problem getting grant money to the places that are willing to move forward with that, is something that we should be dealing with.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, so it's it's something that a lot of us on the board will try to implement some of these practices on our farms, because it's kind of like, somebody's not going to do it if they don't see somebody else doing it, and we know the benefits of these practices. It's kind of like the cover cropping that we've been doing. It started marginally, now it's widespread, but now we need some answers to what are the benefits of these practices that we're doing. And we actually, UVM's, I'm partaking in a study and some other farms through different regions. And correct me if I'm not correct on this, Heather, but it's not just Vermont that they're going to be doing a study with the cover cropping.
Yeah, so we have we're a part of a national program called Precision Sustainable Agriculture. So it's really focused on, looking at the conservation practices far more in depth, like using artificial intelligence as an example to really help farmers reap the maximum benefit from a practice like cover cropping. So it's kind of putting real time like decision-making tools in their hands. And so Larry, several members of the FWA are participating in that national study. So that's really, really exciting.
Yeah, so basically what that study is doing is we're taking, like, we've got a large field and we're doing a few sections where we do not plant the cover crop and the rest we do. So they're going to be testing that throughout the whole season and trying to find, see what the soil health, the benefits are. And one big question that we, myself as a farmer has, when you have the cover crop and I do no-till practices, so I'll plant it in green and then we'll terminate the cover crop. I've always wondered that nitrogen has been uptook in that cover crop. And then when you die, it goes back. When and where does it come back to the plant? And can we, reduce maybe some nitrogen inputs because of that? So there's always, for every practice we do, there's probably 100 questions that need to be answered. And so we need to be doing these sort of studies and that's, we're looking, with being turned down with this other grant, it limits how quickly we can do these studies. Another study they're just starting to do is a tile study. And that one, maybe later on, Heather can talk about that one a little bit, because that's the call that I was on, and I couldn't see the graph, so it was just what I heard, and that study's being doing down on a farm down in St. Albans. And then another aspect of our soil health that we're looking at is, basically all farmers, they're doing these great practices and stuff, and there's benefits to it. And there should be, a way to get revenue from that. Some parts of the country, I think it's Indigo Ag that has already started input that with some of the farmers, I think out in the Midwest, is just carbon sequestering. And, the farmers, they're doing these practices and now they're getting it measured and it's benefiting the environment. There should be a revenue stream attached to that. But that's, it's kind of a little update of what I had to put in.
But without results from a study to show that they're actually doing positive things for our soils and in our environment, it's pretty hard to figure out any kind of a reward program for proceeding with them. So I can understand, the importance of having the money to figure out whether they're actually working, how well they're working, and how much they're reducing pollution to the environment. I think, Chris, did you have a question?
Yeah, Larry, thank you for those comments, because you remind me of something I've been wrestling with. The practices sort of have an inherent value, even economically, right? In enriching soils and at least from what I've understood, the regenerative nature of it helps crops and et cetera. But I've always agreed that we need to make it easy and enticing, maybe for farmers to get started, because it's hard to take on new practices. So when you say that, and a lot of us, and myself included, have been trying to figure out how we would pay farmers for this practice and for taking these steps. Do you see it as something that we need to figure out in order to nudge farmers there, or would you see it as an ongoing thing? You know what I mean? In other words, if there is truly kind of a built-in cycle that's positive, to me, it makes sense to motivate folks to get in there. But I'm wondering if you have been thinking of it as ongoing, and I'm open to whatever, but I'd be curious of your opinion.
I can't, Heather could probably answer that more on point, but it's definitely something that farmers are already participating in.
Yeah.
But we don't know the answers should we be doing like the cover crop, for instance? Are we putting the right rate? Are we seeding down at the right rate? Should we try to do more interseeding, trying to get different types of cover croppings or seedings down that's going to benefit the soil? Because you have to look at the soil like a cow. You need to be able to feed that environment to get nature to do its proper balance or get that production out of the soil and make it healthy and hold the waters intact. The holding capacities is huge benefits, but we don't have numbers, and so we need to do more of these studies, and it's similar to like the tile study that is about to start, but it's not going to be done in 1 year either. That's a frustrating thing. So every year that we don't begin some of these sort of projects, it's hard to get the information to do a better job out there, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, let me, Mr. Chair, if I could just try again, because I'm not asking my question very well, but
You got to start asking your question, just plain question.
well,
No, I didn't. Go
forgive
for it.
my Tuesday morning muddled brain, but here's where I'm coming from. We need these practices to happen on the farm for all sorts of reasons. And it doesn't work very well when Montpelier mandates, hey, farmers, do this, right? Like that's not what anybody thinks is the best way forward. So to me, it's a blend of some incentives to encourage new practices, and us, as you say, do the research to be able to give you technical support and some dollar incentives. But as we pitch these ideas to legislators, to colleagues, one of the questions is, well, is this a program that we're going to have to fund forever? Or, do you think it is also possible that we could kind of sweeten the deal to get people into as they're changing habits, and then maybe it takes off on their own? Is that, I'm just wondering if we see, you mentioned financial assistance for farmers, and I'm trying to figure out if I need to be thinking of as for a forever thing or just as a transition.
I'm talking about the financial assistance. I'm talking about like the UVM programs and stuff, not specifically for a farm. You need some answers to some of the results. So you need to do these practices throughout a bunch of different farms, pick and choose, like these tile studies that they have done over time. You can't just say specifically one farm, is this going to help or not? But as you're saying, fund these projects, it's like the cover cropping, you guys will do, a certain amount of payment there for doing a cover crop practice up to a point. Well, me being a large farm, there's a cap to me, but I don't stop at the cap because I know the benefits that it's doing to me. I see the results. So I try to do that as on all the acres of corn land that's possible there. And other farmers, when they see, you're not going to see the change in 1 year. It's something that's going to take time. Just like the manure, applicating it on top or injecting it. And, we've changed our practices over time where we're injecting and we see the benefits, but you can't see that if you just do it 1 year. Right. So somebody may get discouraged if they don't see, data suggesting, this is what you're going to see on year 1 versus year 4 or 5. And
all right.
So,
thank you.
Could I jump in?
Please.
So I could offer my opinion on that. First off, kind of like Larry says, we need to do more work on benchmarking and figuring out what's working, what's not working. But I do like at least the concept of rewarding those who have kind of built these practices into their business model rather than trying to continue to add things that'll bring people on board. I think we've been at this long enough where a lot of people are on board and have built it into their business model. And there's no real incentive or reward to keep going with that, other than to continue with the programs. So I like the idea of rewarding people that have invested in it, are engaged in it. I think engagement, like they're really honoring what's happening and doing a good job with it. The agency's really concentrating on improving the TMDL, which incentivizes bringing people on board that aren't doing that much. In order to improve those numbers, they could decline if we don't reward the people that are working already and have done a good job. So maybe that helps answer your question on some direction of where.
Yep, that is
Just in my opinion, that's just my opinion where things we may want to put things.
Well, certainly, if we had a way of measuring the results of a particular practice and what those results, if they were working in a very positive way, you could move some of that money toward rewarding farmers for all their hard work and what they've had to pay out and sacrifice to get there. And maybe, you could work on the ones that are just kind of floating along with you, but not doing a heck of a lot. The agency could work a little harder on that crew. But go ahead, Larry. You still have the floor.
I think I've touched on most of the main points that I had on my list. And I can pass it on to the next member at this point.
Yeah. Well, Wayne, I guess it's gotten down to you. You're muted, Wayne. You're still muted. Oh, there
Am I
you
on
go.
it? Okay.
Yeah.
I'm coming from a different angle. I'm 69 years old and looking for retirement. In May, we had to sell our cows, not because we wanted to, because we financially we couldn't stay afloat. We started a beef business here 2 years ago, and we're working with that and plus a greenhouse that we put up. And I guess my concern is today, people that where's the help for the people that want to retire and get out of farming? I won't say get out of farming, but to cut their costs a little bit and have a retirement. What we sold the cows and our base, which we cannot milk cows here anymore, only to pay our debt. Far as having some money to retire on, most of that went there. We sold some land with that also. And I guess it's too bad we don't have some sort of a program or something that will help us at this time with the COVID to help farmers that want to retire and reduce their debt, reduce their workload, I guess, and be able to still survive. I still want to be into farming. It's in my heart. And so I guess we still I'm still working, but my concern is another one is, what's the state going to do to help protect dairy farms and protect the milk market? I see DFA adding on to their equipment and their facility down there, and the farmers are still only getting paid $16 for their milk. And somebody's making a profit off the farmers that it's not coming back to them, and that's got to stop somehow. We're losing a lot of dairy farms here in Vermont, and it's not only the small farms, it's starting to come on to the medium and there's a few large farms that have had to go out, and that's not good. And another thing here on our farm, we've done a lot of things for water quality, and we live, our farms right on Rock River here in Franklin, and we're not seeing a whole lot of difference in the water quality as far as what goes into the comes out of the river. We've done a lot of practices: minimum till, no till, cover crop, strip cropping, and like I said, how much more can we do? I mean, I agree with Larry. How much more can we do for these practices and not really making a difference in the water? Is there something else that we should be doing, or is there something else that we're not testing these programs for, that we can see what's going on? I guess that's probably most of my gist of what I wanted to say. Like I said, we don't hybrid cows here anymore. Just we got some beef and a few dairy cows, or heifers, but that's all. But I'm still concerned about what the dairy market is doing and where the future is of the farmers that are staying in it.
What about, Wayne, what about the equity that you have in the cooperative? Is that something that you recapture, or do they keep that? Or, I mean, how's that? Because a lot of farms pay a lot of money into equity with the co-op, and are they paying that back on a regular basis or not?
Well, they tell me it's they're taking 10% of what you have paid in and paying that over a 10-year period. So it's not it's something, but not a lot. I feel that I've talked to the directors, and I feel like that we paid in on that money, and the times the way they are with the COVID, that I've asked for to have that money sent back to me, and they won't do it.
So if you paid in, I mean, I'm just going to use a number, $100,000, they'll only pay you 10% of that?
Correct.
And
Over a 10-year period.
That's all what about the other 90%?
That's paid over it's 10,000. If you're using your example, it's paid 10,000 a year for 10 years.
Oh, so they do pay it all back?
Yes. Yes. In a period of time.
Yeah.
But you want to, and for us, we could use that money right now to cash flow things. We still have to turn on the lights, so we still have to maintain the farm with taxes, insurance, and stuff. So with no milk going out, it's tough.
Yeah. Yeah, I would think it would be. What about the beef part of your operation now? Is that panning out where it's got any money in it, or is it just turning money over?
Well, we take our beef to Troy and at the slaughterhouse, and we bring it back, and it's packaged, and we sell it here on the farm in packages. And I guess if you figured all your time and everything into it, you ain't making a whole lot, but it's a profit. It's not a lot.
Yeah.
We're not getting into a big. We got a 70, 80 head here, and that's as big as we want to get.
Yeah, because we did get word earlier at the end of last year, or near the end of last year, that the feds have okayed the Vermont Meat Inspection Program, where you could now take meat and sell it across the state lines without having to go through the federal inspection. And I know earlier this year, people in Massachusetts were having in southern New England were having a hard time getting beef for their own use, and the stores were running out. And I didn't know if they might be some type of a market there where we could supply some beef to southern New England if we could handle the extra slaughtering and packaging and butchering.
Well, the issue we have right now, we've built a pretty good customer base, I guess you'd say. But the trouble we're having right now is getting our beef slaughtered. We can't get enough in at one time. We're selling it faster here on the farm than we can get them get them slaughtered, and we don't have enough slaughterhouses here in Vermont to go with this.
Yeah, well, we've certainly heard that story. Questions from the committee members? The farmer retirement system, every now and then that'll pop up, but it really isn't anything that we have spent a lot of time with, because we get going on it and then it would kind of dry up or die out at the farm level. So we haven't really spent a lot of time at that. And I don't know if you read the papers, watch the news, but years ago, the legislature set up a retirement system for our school teachers, and we pump millions of dollars into that, and they do too. And we got a notice a week ago or two, I guess it was, that we're 600 million behind on having that funded at where it should be. And so it would be an awful rough time to try to set up some type of a system like that. I don't know if the other members want to jump in on this, but Chris sits on the finance committee, and I sit on the appropriations committee, and Anthony and Brian are on the government operations committee that looks over all the some of the retirement systems, and it's pretty rough sledding right now for something like that to happen, I think.
I've always been told that, as we farmed up through the years, we've been here for 40 some odd years, that your retirement is when you sell your farm or sell off your part of your farm, your equipment or your cows or whatever. And like I said, we had to do ours and just pay our debt that we had before that. So far as having some money or as a retirement, I feel like I gotta still work, so it's not that I'm crying in my soup. I'm just saying that for other farmers that want to get out because of this, they could have some sort of a future that they can sit back and say, well, we can still maintain and stay home.
Yeah, it's not an easy issue. I think Senator Collmore, did you have your hand up?
I did, Mr. Chair, and thank you. I didn't realize we were going to be talking about this particular issue today, but we do have the State Treasurer, Beth Pierce, coming in on Thursday to present her report to the Government Operations Committee. Senator Polina and I I guess this is our fourth term on that committee together. And she's going to present at least one option, I think, for this. The real issue here is that way back in the 90s, we were not funding both the teacher and the state worker program adequately. And we are experts in the legislature at kicking the can down the road. We really know how to do that pretty well. And we continue to do that all the way through the 90s and into the 2000s. So you're correct, Mr. Chair. We're faced now with a situation where just the interest is going to strangle us at some point because it's exponentially increasing every year. We're not funding it to the extent that we need to. So, of course, the teachers and their union and the state workers are going to not feel it fair to change the rules in the middle of the game. And I understand that. We've made certain promises in terms of pensions to these folks, and the treasurer is going to suggest that we change that to some degree. So I think it is important that we also talk about, as Wayne's talking about, when a farmer's reached the end for him or her on his land, what happens? Is there someone that takes it over? Is it, from the family? Is it sold? Is it turned into something else? And those are exactly the sorts of things that this committee, I think, needs to really focus on. And we're right in the middle of a huge situation too with the pandemic, which makes it even harder. But justified, because I'm always interested. I mean, most of the work that we've heard about in the last 4 or 5 years here, and probably much longer, is focused on phosphorus reduction and the ability of farmers to take part in that, and they have taken part of that. But I'm curious also, we've got neighbors to the west and neighbors to the north. One of them is, of course, a different country, and the other is our neighbor to the west. Are things changing with respect to the way they're working with you guys and trying to, I mean, it really doesn't do any good if we do our best on this side of the lake and get all our stuff taken care of, and they're still doing sort of bad things to the land over on the other side or even up north. How are things with the other folks?
We don't really hear a whole lot, to be honest. I mean, we used to work quite closely with many of the Canadian water quality folks, and some interaction with New York, but honestly, our conservation, as you mentioned, Senator, we've raced so far ahead of everyone around us. We're definitely setting the example. And it is disheartening. I live in Alberg, so I'm right, close to New York, and I can drive to Plattsburgh to get groceries and pass by, probably 1,000 acres of corn and not see a single cover crop. So
And it goes right to the lake too.
yeah, right on the lake. Like not even just the road, as a buffer. And they still are allowed to spread manure in the winter too. I mean, there's a lot of restrictions, of course, but by far Vermont has the most strict water quality standards and regulations. And I would say by far, we also have the most engaged farming community implementing practices. So, I mean, we're just at a really different level. I hate to be like that, but unless they're asking us, unless they're asking us to come over and show them how to get it done, we're not learning a whole lot from them.
But you're right, Heather, that's reality. And the New York legislature and the Canadian government just hasn't caught up to where we are. And I fully appreciate the efforts that have gone on in the last few decades to minimize, or at least to have BMPs that make a lot of sense and that everybody understands and does pretty well.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Chris?
Yeah, just quickly to Wayne's question. We have invested in VHCB that does work with farms to transition, and some of that can be retirement planning. So I don't know if you've been able to take advantage of that. And for the last many years, we've also been pushing the treasurer to help all sorts of small businesses that are left out of the pension structure to create what's called the Green Mountain, Green Mountain Secure Retirement Plan. That has been super slow coming online, but and it won't help you, Wayne, given that you're close to retiring. But we're not totally oblivious to this challenge and trying to help a lot of small businesses that are in the same a similar position without having any retirement savings. So we have done a little bit of work to try to set up some infrastructure that different businesses could buy into. But specifically for your question, you're around your farm. I don't know if you've been able to take advantage of some of the succession work that happens through VHCB and their technical assistance. But a lot of farmers have told us that's been instrumental to them passing on the farm or whatever. So just want to make sure you're aware of that.
Okay, thank you.
Anything else, Wayne?
No, do it, I guess.
Well, good luck to you on your endeavors into the future. But Larry, do you have a question or a statement?
Yeah, I just wanted to go back and touch on what Senator Collmore said about the phosphorus reduction and some challenges. I don't think there's some answers out there that aren't getting helped. In my opinion, a lot of us farmers, we've been merging to stay in business. So your area of your production is miles away from some of your land base. And it kind of proved it this past year. We've got some land that's 16, 18 miles away, and being river bottom land, you cannot, after October 15th, you can't be on it. And then after, I'm not sure if it's April 15th or something. So there's a very small window to be able to get that over to those lands. And that's just land for us in the dairy. But there's a lot of them also that don't have dairies anymore, but they're growing soybeans or corns or whatnot. And when we can't get that manure there, we are now buying the fertilizers that is not produced in this state, and we're bringing it into this state. These manures can be utilized on these lands. And this past year kind of proved it for us where, the fuel price got dropped to basically $1 a gallon, and we were able to hire a lot more trucks, and the weather was right to get it to our location. But I just think there's a lot of land in Vermont that is not getting any manures, which is going to put organic matter into your soils and help absorb, the water, being able to utilize that. And I just think that there's some opportunity there where, there may be a way to marry some of these crop farmers with the dairy manures and move it that way instead of trying to condense it into a form and put it into a market that's not established. That's what we're trying to do with some of these phosphorus innovations that they're trying to do, is they're trying to make a market that's not there yet. But in the meantime, here's something that is not getting properly utilized, in my opinion. But I just wanted to bring that up to light. And thank you for that.
Larry, is river bottom land, or is that classified different than regular land? So your season of spreading manure is shortened?
Yes. Yes, with the RAPs, yes. So frequently flooded lands has a narrower window to be able to apply your manure zone. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. Any other questions? If not, we'll move on to Heather.
Great.
And you're the fourth batter. Usually cleanup's third batter, isn't it? But anyways, Heather, it's great to have you with us.
Thanks for inviting us. I don't know, is it okay to share some slides? Can I share my screen? I didn't send them ahead of time. I was just thinking as everybody was talking, and I thought it might be helpful.
Well, if you can put it up on the screen, is that the way we do that, Linda?
I think Linda has to allow me to do it.
Yes, and I made you a co-host so you can do that.
Oh, thank you. All right. So just can everybody see this now?
Yeah,
Okay, so I just wanted to try to go through and touch on some of the topics that were mentioned by the farmers and the Farmers Watershed Alliance and projects that we've been doing together. And the first thing, the last thing I guess that Larry mentioned about manure movement and manure transfer. This is it's an opportunity for us in Vermont. And I think I did a whole project on the feasibility of this. I handed the report in to the Vermont Agency of Agriculture. They, worked with UVM Extension to identify the opportunities. And what was clear was that it was actually cheaper to import chicken manure to farms than it was to actually move manure from a Vermont farm to another Vermont farm, unless they were literally right next to each other. So in order to have like a viable manure movement transfer program, there's going to have to be some kind of incentives associated with it to make it happen. And we have this valuable resource in our state. We have issues in some agricultural areas with phosphorus loading, which means we may need to move phosphorus out of that area. And in order to do that, we, as Larry said, we should be taking this valuable resources and moving it to farms that really need it. And believe it or not, there are actually a lot of farms that are running a manure deficit. And we could overcome that, but we really have to wrap our heads around this. So I'll just put that out there. But we've done the work, so it's a matter of like, where do we go with it from here?
that
Yeah.
rig in front of us, Heather, that you've got on there, that
Yep.
picture, is that an injector
Yep.
type?
Exactly. So this is an investment that you folks made. This is the grassland manure injector up in Lake Carmi. So we can all remember that moment where there was a lot of conversation around Lake Carmi, and there still is. And one of the efforts that we thought should be done was to inject manure into the grassland, because of all the acres up in Carmi, most of it's grass. There's about 200 acres of corn and well over 1,000 acres of grass. So you folks invested in this injector. We got it up and running this summer. We covered about 575 acres, which, we wanted to do more, but getting all this going during COVID was already a nearly impossible task. And just to be able to get this much work done was incredible. The collaboration among the farmers, so on and so forth. So what we're really trying to do is, nail down what the actual costs are for running this machine, because it is above what it costs, a farmer to broadcast manure. So really trying to figure out how much it's going to cost us to run this so we keep it going. So that's the injector. I don't know if we have time for this video, but because it's magically running, I guess we'll let you watch it.
Yeah.
And, Jim Dewing and Jeff Sanders. Jim is a farmer up in Lake Carmi, and Jeff works with me at Extension. I mean, really, they were the two that made all of this happen throughout the season, as well as the farmers themselves. And so you can see the manure being injected. Actually, you can't see it, which is the point. So,
and it's also aerating the soil, isn't
yeah,
it?
it is. It's a really shallow injection, but yes, it is providing a little bit of aeration. So the other project we're working with the FWA on is actually a pretty huge undertaking, where we're looking at something called whole farm nutrient management, which is probably something you haven't heard maybe in the past, but this is actually looking at our normal nutrient management in the fields, combined with understanding whole farm nutrient balances, what's going on the farm and off the farm, combined with precision feed management. So, you know, this is sort of taking all the tools that we have and combining them together to see if we can make some further gains in reducing phosphorus loading onto farms. And, you know, it would be great to come back and just talk about this because there's a lot of really interesting and exciting results here that we don't have time to get into. Again, it's a real opportunity, you know, just some numbers we've calculated in the past couple of weeks are showing that on some farms, taking this approach could easily save a farmer $80,000 to $100,000 a year. Now, don't go spread that number around, and I know I'm being recorded, but there's some real opportunities here, huge. And you know, I'd like to talk to you more about that at some point. Discovery Acres was what Larry was alluding to. So this is a project that myself and the FWA has been trying to get off the ground for about 6 years. And I think this is the frustrating piece where the people on the ground can clearly see what needs to happen, what needs to be studied to make significant progress, but it feels like no one listens. But 6 years later, I don't want to say no one listens. You know, sometimes it's about, you know, investing the money. I don't know what, there's lots of reasons, but about 6 years later, I'm so thrilled to say that Vermont Agency of Agriculture invested in this project. And just, I mean, this is huge. This will be the only project like this in the entire country that has ever been conducted to the best of our knowledge. So that's how unique this is. And it's really being guided, it's research being guided by the farmers in the St. Albans Bay, so in a critical source area in the Jewett Brook with one of our farmer members. And the goal is to get rigorous scientific data that farmers need to know, as well as you folks, to make effective policy. So what is this Discovery Acres? We have a field here where we have installed 4 watersheds. So here says potential 4th watershed. This will be another watershed. So this is a watershed here and here on the other side that do not have any tile installed. And then here, these 2 in the middle both have tile installed at 25-foot spacing to a 40-inch depth. And what makes this actually so unique, which seems odd, is that nobody has actually ever been able to have this kind of collaboration with farmers to go in and install a scientifically valid experiment with the same soil types in the same field that are going to be able to compare tile versus no tile and look at different treatments even. So we have the opportunity here to look at what the farmers are already doing, which is cover cropping in this particular farm, cover cropping, some reduced tillage, and nutrient management. And then in this other block, we're able to apply the practices that we think are going to even push us above and beyond, and compare those to what people are doing now. Again, looking at tile versus no tile, measuring surface runoff. That's what these little ports are here, and runoff or water coming out of the tiles. So this has been a huge project to install. We put in this tile, not me personally, but our team, exactly how we wanted it set up with the right grade. So it's exciting to finally get this off the ground. And the farmers, like Larry was mentioning, I mean, this is what we've been wanting to do to really understand where can we go from here? And how do we put the best practices into place to minimize runoff, and loss out of tile lines. So
How big
ahead.
are those plots, Heather?
This
What are-
area right here is about 20 acres, 24 acres. So each one is about a little, I think 6 or 7, so a
Yeah,
little over
so
6. They're pretty good size.
Senator Collmore?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Heather, I'm assuming something, I'm sure I'm right, but I just want to double check. The cover crop is all the same, correct? The only difference here, the control mechanism, is whether there's tile drainage or not, right? And the depth of it.
Yeah, so we haven't actually installed any treatments. That's what the group is deciding at this point. What is it that we're actually going to evaluate? And there will be 2 different treatments. And we will be comparing those. So let's say we have, here we'll have just cover crop with corn growing without tile. This one might be just cover crop with corn growing with tile. This one will be cover crop, no-till, whatever else we want to try with tile. And then this watershed will be, cover crop with everything we want to try without tile. So again, it's like something nobody else has really been able to do. And we're deciding on the treatments collectively with the farmers to figure out what is it that we want to know.
Thank you.
And you'll have like tons per acre, the whole 9 yards.
Yeah, I
Yep.
mean, just those questions, like we make these assumptions. I don't want to say they're assumptions. They're real information from farmers saying, hey, if I didn't have tile, I would have half the yield. Well, this is going to show us what that tile is really doing for the crop, for the soil health, for water quality, and we'll be collecting the economics and et cetera with it as well. So, you will be invited out to this site at some point. It's on a really heavy clay soil. It's got phosphorus levels, soil test levels that are in the optimum range. So we're not, starting on a field with low phosphorus. It's realistic of what's happening down in St. Albans Bay.
Yeah.
Okay, I know I'm not sure how pressed we are for time, but
Yeah, we have plenty of time, Heather.
okay. Because there's just some exciting things here that you folks should know. So this is a big conservation innovation grant that UVM and with partnership with the Farmers Watershed Alliance received the fall of 2019. And the goal of this, again, because here in Vermont, Larry said this, farmers have already adopted cover crops. We know there's still more work to do. There's still farmers that aren't, but the farmers that they have a lot of questions. They're racing beyond just getting them in the ground as far as what they want to know. So one of the things that we're trying to figure out is, should we be changing the way that we grow corn to grow better cover crops? Like, who would have ever thought we would be at that point where we're saying, let's cut down the corn populations, let's change our herbicides, let's plant at different times with different row spacings so that we can get better cover crops. That's amazing to me, but that's where we're actually at. And so this project involves 30 farms, many of them that are members of the FWA. And again, this was a huge lift during a pandemic to get all these farmers, on board and ready to trial out these modified practices. And so again, we're lowering the, I don't want to say the toxicity level of the herbicide, but in order to interseed a cover crop like you see here, you can't have a lot of herbicide residual. So by nature, we have to use herbicides that have less less residual. So things like atrazine that I know are, weighing heavy on people's minds, cannot be used in this system. And so, we're trying to evaluate what other herbicides can we use so that literally we can go back in sometimes 2 weeks later and plant this cover crop.
That is 2 weeks after you plant the corn
Well,
or it comes up?
Yeah, well, so we are testing different timings, but it's anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks.
I'll be dang.
And so, you can see how small the corn is here, and we're interseeding the cover crops. Now, I mean, there's just a lot of work to do here, but again, I mean, this is where our farmers are at. They're even looking at expanding the width of their corn rows to get more cover crop. I mean, it's a pretty
The picture on the right, Heather, is that
Yep.
the cover crop
Yep.
growing?
Yeah, so you can see the
Yep.
cover crop is already up and growing. At this point right here, the corn is starting to canopy, we call it. And so once it's full canopy, there's no sunlight really that hits the ground. So our goal is we got to get that cover crop up and growing before the canopy closes. And at that point, generally, the cover crop will go dormant. It'll sort of grow a little bit, but it'll just kind of maintain until the corn starts to dry down and we get ready for harvest, and then it really picks up growing. So, this is a huge project and a lot of effort. So a couple of things I really think are important, because you're going to be hearing a lot, I think, about regenerative ag and soil health, and I don't even know where to start with this, except to say that just because a soil is really healthy doesn't always necessarily mean that the farmer is going to obtain higher yields.
Huh.
And this might even go against something I've said before, but there's a lot to soil health, and there's a lot to improving it, increasing it, understanding it. And so I'm just going to try to show you a little bit of information that we've collected that's starting to put all these pieces together for the farmers that we're working with. So here we have 4 different cropping systems. CC is continuous corn. This has been in continuous corn for 15 years. So you can see the yield in this particular year, which happened to be 2014, is 17 tons roughly. So new corn, NC, this was sod in 2013. It was plowed under and planted to corn in 2014. So this is our rotation, right? So rotating from sod to corn. This is a 23-ton yield in the first year of corn. Here's our no-till corn. This has been no-till since 2011, and it came out of sod. So basically it was, a hay field. It got sprayed with herbicide, and then we no-tilled into it in 2011, and it was a no-till ever since, no-till corn, continuous, and this is 2014. So you can see our yield here is not any better, not really any worse than the continuous corn. And then here you can see continuous corn, again, for the same amount of time, 15 years, with a winter cover crop. That's the only difference. 20 tons of corn silage.
So you gained 3 ton per acre of corn.
Yes.
With a cover crop.
In continuous corn for 15 years with a cover crop. Okay. So I want to get to the kind of some of the gory details, but the point being here that no-till, even when it's kind of longer term no-till alone, okay, so this is just continuous no-till corn silage, is not really gaining us anything in the yield department.
And how many years was that in this measurement taken of 16.5 or
Yeah,
in
it was in no-till for 4 years,
Huh.
coming out of sod. So,
Yeah.
and I'll show you the data stays the same over many years. Okay. So I think what's really exciting to us is that simply using a winter rye cover crop can make a really significant impact on people's yields.
Yeah.
And I know people have observed that, not just me in my research, but the farmers too. So here's over more time, okay? And so this is perennial forage. This is like a hayfield. So here's the no-till corn, this blue line, and you can see sometimes it's equal to continuous corn and sometimes it's lower. And this is, again, it's been in no-till since 2011. And, you know, the yields just, they're not very good. And
No.
again, I just want to reiterate a point here. This is continuous no-till silage. There's no manure in this system and there's no cover crop. All right. So then this green line up here is that corn in rotation, right? So in the first year rotation, it yielded 22 tons. In the second year out of sod, it also yielded higher than any of the other treatments. By the third year out of sod, you can see the yields start to align with continuous corn.
Yep.
Right? So again, this is why we try to get this in to our farmers as well as you folks. Rotations are really important, but a 3-year rotation is kind of the maximum yield benefit that you see coming out of sod. After that, the yields really sort of transition more to those of continuous corn or corn with a, you know, this cover crop. Okay. So the corn with a cover crop, you can see it, you know, it hovers slightly above most of the other treatments most of the time.
So Heather, what happens to the soils in the
Yep.
meantime?
All right.
When all this is
Yep.
going on?
So here we go. All right. So over from 2005 to 2017, we see a 2-ton yield increase for corn silage. Okay, across all those years. And this study's still going on and it's no different. This year, we saw a 1-ton increase over continuous corn. So that cover crop is working some kind of magic in that soil, like beyond what the no-till is doing to improve crop yields. Here's one measurement of soil health, which is soil respiration. So this is microbes breathing. And you can see that the no-till corn, okay, has higher respiration at first, okay? So again, remember, this is out of sod, so it has high soil quality. Here's the perennial forage, high soil quality. Here's the green bars, the new corn, just came out of sod, okay? Now, this no-till soil health begins to decline over time, okay, as far as soil respiration goes, because it's only growing corn. There's nothing else happening there. It's not being tilled, but you can see the biology itself is not very active. It's more active than just continuous corn, but really nothing else. And here, this yellow bar is with the winter cover crop. And it's always higher than continuous corn. And I'm thinking, I'm not sure, but this is part of the reason that we're seeing that increased yield. Okay. Now, organic matter, it goes perennial forage having the highest, corn rotated, you know, out of sod, second highest, no-till, third highest, continuous corn, winter cover crop, no difference. Okay. Active carbon, which is just it's a measurement of food available to the microbes. Same thing here. Same thing here. Okay. For some reason, that cover crop is not really impacting most of our soil health measurements. Here's aggregate stability, like the physical health, but it's improving yields by a lot, by more than no-till. But you can see the
So
no-till.
you're getting 2 ton per acre more in product and not really affecting the soil health that much, right?
Not on paper, right? So the only thing I see that's different is this respiration, which is really represents growing plants. And I seem so crazy, but having a growing plant year round on those soils is making a huge difference in yield and biological activity. It doesn't appear to do a whole lot for some of the other parameters, but the farmers are seeing better yields, and that is an incentive to continue to use a practice, right?
Yeah.
So I hope you're getting to where I want you to go.
Well, I don't know if
Not
that's
fast enough. Not fast enough.
I don't know if that's the case, but if you're growing 2 ton of more corn per acre, what is that enough in value to cover the cover cropping cost per acre?
It should. Yep. But so here's the rest of the story, and this is to me one of the most fascinating pieces. So this CT means conventional tillage, FM or SM means fall or spring manure, and then we have no cover crop or winter rye cover crop. So here's an experiment where I'm stacking up all these practices to see what value, like increased value we can create by doing all of them. And really at the end of the day, this is the ticket, right? So here's no-till on the end. No-till with a spring manure and a winter rye cover crop. Okay, here's 2020. You can see, produced the best, some of the best yields. So no-till with manure and no-till with a cover crop. And no-till in general, when you add manure and cover crops into the mix, or just manure, has better yields than what I was showing you before. So the manure is a really important component, and the cover crop, to making the no-till part of our program a success. Okay, we know that no-till protects the organic matter and will increase organic matter. But it can't really improve yields considerably without having these other practices on top of it. So you can see 2019 and 2020 really different. And this 2020 line is after 3 years of no-till. So you can see the yields have stabilized after 3 years of no-till with manure and cover crops. And I imagine with manure and cover crops and no-till, now the yields will start to go up, which is really different than the other project where we were only using no-till. So I guess my point here is there's not one single answer that's going to push us to be the best, to have the best, and reap all the benefits we're looking for, whether you're a farmer, policymaker, water quality advocate. It's really a combination of all these. I think the other thing I really want to know is that conventional tillage is also not the devil. And we can produce high quality soil and yields with minimal tillage as well. So there's lots of ways to accomplish this. And I know we're probably running out of time. And so I just, combining these practices, this is aggregate stability. So it's this, right? This is stable aggregates when it rains, and this is not stable aggregates when it rains. This is runoff, erosion, lots of issues here, production wise and water quality wise. Here, not so much. This is what we're striving for. And so you can see with no-till, manure, and cover crop, the aggregate stability starts to increase. So combining the practices are really important. Okay. And you can see here, conventional till with a winter rye cover crop is better for aggregate stability than no till without a cover crop.
Yep.
Right. So we have to be focused on stacking the practices where it makes sense. We also have to realize there's more than one way to accomplish where we want to go. There's no set way. We need to recognize that the perennial forage in a rotation with corn can help maintain soil quality. And in the corn years, we can even improve soil quality in a rotation. So, I mean, these concepts that we've been talking about are they're really critical to our success, but not alone. They have to be used together. So I just want to end on this. There's a lot of talk about soil health, regenerative ag. We need to do better. And so one of the things we started to do this year with the FWA is to measure soil health. This is 60 fields in Franklin County, on conventional dairy farms, in corn. And you can see that the average score for these cornfields was 79.6%. A score of 80 is considered very healthy soil. So you can see where these fields are falling. You can see control versus trial. This was part of our cover crop study. But just based on this alone, we're doing pretty damn good. I mean, and I couldn't think of any other fields that would represent like corn in Vermont than these, And so this is exciting to me. I know we can do better, but when we have fields pushing 90% and some even almost 100, these are our conventional cornfields, folks. And when I say conventional, I mean conventional now is cover cropping, is no-till, are rotations. So
do you know, Heather, why it looks like you've got one at 90 up there and one that's even up higher?
Yeah.
Why those two particular fields are so much, quite a little bit higher?
A little bit higher. Yeah, I haven't dug into every single data point, but some of these fields are coming out of rotation. Some of them are in long-term no-till. But I mean, to me, the point here was, how can we be making assumptions that the health of the soil in Vermont is poor or needs to be much better without knowing where we're starting from?
Well,
and and so this is part of it. And so the project that Larry said was not funded, what we want to try to accomplish this summer, and we thought this would be a start to it, is to document the state of soil health in the state of Vermont. It's not a hard thing to do. Will it take money? Yes. But why are we not investing in understanding where we're starting from? But instead, we're starting from a point of it needs to be better. And certainly there are improvements that can be made, but before we know where we're at, how can we just forge ahead? And so, that's really our goal, was our goal with the FWA, was to basically go out and benchmark a couple hundred fields and just kind of really get a solid, especially after we saw this data saying these are just cornfields, like like some people are just dying over these fields thinking they're like the worst soils in the world. And we're doing a good job. So I think this isn't it's not a huge lift really. And so we were pretty disappointed it didn't get funded. But I think this should be a real priority for us, especially with so much conversation around this. Lastly, just to hit home where we could go with this, here's a couple of data sets of Vermont soil. This is our average organic matter levels, 2 different data sets. They match up pretty well. This is NRCS 5.6%, UVM Soil Lab 5.3%. This is the national average. So we are well above that. The thing I've been thinking about a lot is how much carbon dioxide could we sequester, more carbon dioxide could we sequester, especially in some of our cornfields. You saw in my other slide where, about 3% organic matter. I know, so here's just a quick fact. If we increase organic matter by 0.4%, we can sequester an equivalent of 985,000 metric tons of CO2. Can we do this? Well, if you think back to the data I showed you, clearly it's possible because, our continuous cornfield to our field in rotation has a difference of 1% organic matter. So, at least on some fields, and with added practices or combinations of practices, I think we can easily achieve this on a set, certainly number of acres. And if we look at our inventory and if our footprint's 840,000 metric tons, I feel like we can achieve that, but we can't do it if we don't know where we're starting from. So, again, this sort of plea to think about that. All right, I took up a lot of your time. Sorry, but thanks.
Well, no, I mean, what you presented is critical for us to be able to make policy decisions to move forward with. And, I mean, we get everybody in our, in our committee, and most of them don't have data like this to present. And it's very important, I think, to us as the committee, one of the committees dealing with this, to see these studies come out in over quite a period of time. We also, of course, are going to have to work with natural resources, and I don't know if they would invite you in, but it's too bad they couldn't hear, this presentation, because we work with them, and it's always a hard sell. But God, it's pretty hard to buck facts and figures in a study that's gone on for this length of time.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, it's all new to us too. Like putting all these pieces together literally happened a couple months ago, just really starting to connect the dots. But what's been really clear is it's going to be really hard for us to track progress, gain market share, if we're talking about ecosystem services and things like that, without having a baseline. And why wouldn't we be the first state in the nation to clearly set forth the state of soil health here and say, yeah, we know what we're dealing with. We know this is where we want to make some improvements, but overall, look at us. I think we have a lot to be proud of here, and it's unfortunately not shown widely.
Well, I mean, this is the first time we've been able to see it, so I'd pat you on the back if I could, but can't reach you, Heather.
Yeah, well, and the farmers too, like they haven't seen this yet either. So
Oh,
sorry, Larry Scott, Wayne.
I
Because
think
it is.
Brian, Senator Collmore has a question or statement.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And nice presentation, Heather. And don't worry about taking up our time. That's what we're here for. That's what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
So I know we're kind of concentrating, and I know Scott wants to weigh in too, on the northwest part of the state. And all of our guests are from that area. But one of the slides you had showed that you wanted to get sort of a baseline reading about soil health across the whole state.
Yep.
And I know on the eastern side, nitrogen sort of takes center stage instead of the phosphorus issue. So how different are we going to show, the soil from one county to another?
Yeah, well, I think it'll it'll really depend on, so some of it will be soil type, differences that we'll see. There'll certainly be differences between clay soils versus sandier soils. So we will see some of those differences. We'll be able to break those out, by soil texture primarily. And then I think it's really, production system differences that we'll end up seeing, like dairy versus row crop, probably versus vegetables. Just based on past work that I've done, dairy farms actually end up having really good soil health compared to other types of production systems, simply because there's manure added to those farms. So I think it'll be more those kinds of differences than specific counties of the state. But my goal is to cover our whole state, a representation of our whole state. We could do all the farms, but that would be a large investment.
That'd be a big grant, yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Heather.
Any of your counterparts with the extension in other areas of the state, or any of them practicing or doing any of these practices that would show us what's happening?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely. I mean, we are very active up in the, Northwest region, as you mentioned, but people are active all over the state, and we all work collaboratively, over in your neck of the woods too, Bobby. We have a lot of work going on over there. And this CIG project I was talking about, I shouldn't say we, Jeff, that works with me, drove the interseeder and the planter all the way over to the Royer farm so that they could participate. The O'Donnells participated. So, we're trying to cover a lot of ground. Yeah.
Scott, you had your hand up.
Yeah, a couple things have come up just through discussion in my head. One thing, I have a book I'm reading on regenerative agriculture and trying to figure out myself what that is. And it's a Midwestern-based book. And for quite a while, I've been attending like the National No-Till Conference in the Midwest. And we hear a lot of people that say this is what the Midwest is doing, and we integrate those practices. So anyway, this book really talks about integrating animals in with a crop rotation, which is what we've done in the Northeast for seemingly forever. So it actually isn't surprising to see some of the numbers that are popping up with soil health. And it's very interesting that we've been chasing Midwestern practices, and now all of a sudden they're kind of adopting some of what we've done forever and saying that's healthy. So it's pretty cool to see some data that kind of backs up that we've kind of been doing a lot of things right. And it's great to see that data. So I think it's well supported, or it's wise to support that type of work. Another thing I just wanted to pop in, I work in precision ag. We did some work on the grassland injector. We work with a lot of farmers. And that's something the farmers can use at the farm level to collect data and learn more from and implement on their farm. So it's already being supported in the agency, and it should definitely continue to be, in my opinion, just so that we have something at the farm level to produce data, and I help train farmers too through a CWIP grant on how to use that technology. I worked with the operator of the grassland injector, and people are going to need to know how to continue to work with that to connect all these dots in the future.
Yeah, Chris?
Thank you. My question was for Heather. We heard from the Ag Agency last week, I think, that payment for ecosystem services, which is, nibbles around what we're talking about, soil health, obviously, is a priority, and they want to continue supporting that work. Are you aware of any soil? I mean, I totally agree with you. That work is important, and a baseline is vital to us understanding if that work is happening. So are you aware of any baseline measuring that they're contemplating in that? I mean, I know a lot of it's been at watershed sort of farmer-led discussions, which I think is fantastic, but I'm curious if you have any sense of the agency's desires around measuring those baselines as you've been talking about.
Yeah, I mean, they're looking at a number of different options. They're right now with their new CIG project. I know it's really a pilot. They're considering using a model to basically model phosphorus, losses from farms through farm prep, it's called. Having a baseline of what the farmers currently doing and then proposing additional practices. But I believe most of that right now is really focused around phosphorus, and not soil health as a whole. But their other program that they had, the Vermont Environmental Stewardship Program, part of that was trying to evaluate soil health. But we are supposed to meet about that and figure out where things are at. But as far as developing a statewide baseline, I haven't heard any real talk of that. We have gone around to NRCS, to the agency, various folks saying, we want to do this. People are in support of it. So it's just figuring out like the big piece, like, okay, how do we pay for it? We're working on that too.
Thanks. I mean, obviously we'll explore it, but I was just curious what you heard.
Yep.
Yeah. So Ryan, you work with Ryan at the agency?
Yeah. Yep.
Yep. He seems to have a pretty good handle on, on promoting this kind of, this stuff.
Yeah, I think so. They have a lot on their plate too. A lot of things they're trying to juggle, and they're trying to tap in to folks that can be helpful, to help them guide the program. So, I feel like trying to reach out and figure out what's going to work. And we've been involved with that. FWA has been involved with that. So we'll see where it goes.
Corey, you had your hand up?
Yeah, I don't have a question. I just wanted to thank Heather for her work. I'm always impressed when you present, and then Larry, Scott, and Wayne. It's clear for me, at least when I drive around the county, the work you guys have been doing over the years. You can see it from just I didn't grow up on a farm. I grew up in St. Albans City, but you can see the improvement just in my 8 years or so in the legislature now. And I really want to thank you for all your hard work. You're incredibly important to our corner of the state.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we need to have a visit with the Champlain Valley Basin outfit about handing out grants.
Yeah.
Did they, I mean, they get tons of money. Did they give you any reason or why they didn't think your grant proposal was good?
Not yet. We did ask some of, I'm not sure, but it may not have been the right fit for the call, that came out. They did encourage us to apply for their other grant program. And we are going to do that. I mean, we're going to do this. And when I get my mind set on something, I follow it through. So we'll figure out a way to do it. It would be nice, to have that, the support. Even at that level, because the farmers up in our area, I mean, they just see the value of, and the power of that knowledge, like how are we doing? And, how can we do better? But then this whole conversation around ecosystem services, it just gives us more information. We're able to measure percent carbon, and you add that to bulk density, and we can really measure how much carbon is being stored on these farms right now. So we're going to do it.
Does Giro, do they do any cover cropping over
No.
at their place?
No, and they don't do any cover cropping over.
You ought to go over and chat with them.
Yeah, they also have farms in
If
Vermont.
they could gain 2 tons per acre.
I know. Well, they have farms.
If they could gain 2 tons per acre, go ahead, Heather.
Oh, I was just going to say they have farms in Vermont, and they don't cover crop there either.
I'll be darned. You would think.
Do they own a few in Alberg, Kevin? 'Cause I've seen them go through.
Well, they own one place. Yeah, they own Guy Pilardi's old farm. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah, you would think if they could gain a couple of tons per acre on their cropping and build better soils, that they would jump on that. But the old saying is you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make the horse drink.
That's true.
And I was going to say, I don't know if you folks have ever dealt with the grant writer at VHCB, but we do have, we even put more money in last year, so there's probably two there, if not more, that are supposed to work with projects for small communities. And they'll, if you have a project going, you apply to them, and then they look for grant monies all over heck and feed it back. And the first and second and third year, I think that one grant writer in those 3 years brought in something like over $4 million for small communities. So, that might be an option for you folks to give them a call and see if there's anything there that might be able to help you.
Yeah, thank you. It's a good suggestion.
Are there other questions from the committee members? Well, everybody looks pretty good. I think so. We'll wrap it up. And does Linda have a copy of that program that you showed us, Heather?
No, but I can send it to her. It was kind of off the cuff there. I threw it together while people were talking, so I didn't send it to her, but I can. Yep.
Well, I think it would be helpful for the committee when we get into the soil health discussion. And, maybe we would have get one over to Natural Resources Committee. I don't know, maybe Bray would read that, but I would think they would be interested in your findings as well.
Yeah.
Anything from the committee, anything else?
No, I
If
think we're going
not-
to see both Scott and Larry on Thursday, Mr. Chair, with the other topic we're going to be taking up.
Yeah, they're invited to participate. Scott, do you have I see your hand up.
I was wondering if everyone on the committee got the invite to our annual meeting on Wednesday. We did a joint annual meeting between the watershed groups.
Yes, I have that, and I haven't figured out whether I can be there or not. I'll tell you, it's a crazy time. A lot of nights we don't get done Zooming until 5, 6, 7 o'clock. Yes, I've got that right here on the table. Hopefully, I'll be able to make it, and of course, any of the other members. So if there isn't anything else, we used up 2 hours of your time, and I think it was well worth it. You folks have got had an excellent overall presentation, and if we as we move forward, if you run across something that we can be helpful with, feel free to contact us anytime. And thanks for all the hard work you're doing on behalf of our soil health and our farmers. It'll spread across the state, that's for sure. So with that, thanks again, and we'll see some of you Thursday. And Heather, you're always welcome if you think it's worthy of your time.
Yeah, well, I read over the policy or the report, and I certainly have I've seen it. Yeah, I wouldn't mind listening for sure.
Yeah,
So maybe
very
I'll
good.
ask Linda. Okay, thanks everyone.